This week on the Destination Angler. All right, so how big is that tarpon hanging on the wall behind you there?
Length time girth squared 168.
Say it again. Run that by me again.
Well, we released it. We just taped it.
Okay.
But that fish was caught way in the back of the Keys, and it was interesting. We hooked it, and the fight didn't last 15, 20 minutes. It
Really?
jumped like crazy, got it up, measured it, and released it.
Yeah, 168 pounds, you estimate.
So length, so the formula is length times the girth squared divided by 800.
Oh, really? Okay, there you go, folks. That's a pro tip. And that was Frank Catino from Indian River. Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haig. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa, whoa.
Hey anglers, welcome back to another episode of the Destination Angler. Up next on the Destination Angler, we are headed to the White River in Arkansas with wet fly aficionado Davey Watton. After that, we go down under to the North Island of New Zealand to chase those giant trout New Zealand is famous for. And be sure to backcast to catch the last episode of the Destination Angler on Steelhead Alley in Northeast Ohio with Josh McQueen. Josh gives us a masterclass on steelhead behavior, flies and rigs that consistently produce, plus why he prefers dirty water. You won't want to miss these shows. Want to be the first to know about new episodes? Well, head on over to the Destination Angler website and become a subscriber. Folks, and if you like the show, please be sure to hit that subscribe button to catch all the Destination Angler episodes coming your way. And please share with a buddy. And today our destination is the Indian River near the Kennedy Space Center on the Central Florida coast. And our guest is Captain Frank Catino, who gives us the lowdown on the Indian River, the Banana River, and Mosquito Lagoon. Stretching over 150 miles, anglers can lose themselves in a sea of mangrove shorelines, shallow grass flats, and numerous islands where great numbers of tarpon, redfish, snook, and speckled trout thrive. Frank has led a super interesting life. Having fished these waters for 45 years, he shares stories from fishing with the likes of Lefty Kreh, Yvonne Chenard, and Roger Waters from, can you guess, Pink Floyd. Plus how he came to build reels for Orvis and serve as mayor of his hometown. Plus we get the lowdown on the seasons, tarpon and redfish behavior, and stick around to the end for some great tips on surf fishing. Let's hear from Frank. Well, Frank, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Steve. Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is really fun to be talking about Florida. Of course, we're going into the winter where people are starting to think about getting out of cold weather climates and coming down to Florida. So perfect timing, right? And
right.
I have to ask you, so you're in Satellite Beach, Florida, is that right?
Yes, sir. Where Satellite Beach is I'm from the center of the state where most people know Orlando area. I'm due east of Orlando and just a few miles south of Kennedy Space Center.
Oh, cool. All right, I wanted to ask you about that. So, like living nearby that, is it a big deal when a rocket takes off? Do you even look out the window?
A lot of them, they plan on shooting almost 300 a year is their goal now.
Really?
But I moved here with my parents. I was 3 years old, 1956. And the reason you came here to this area was because of the space program. There was really nothing here that job-wise other than Patrick Air Force Base and Kennedy Space, or Cape Canaveral back then.
Yeah.
So you were here because of the space program. So rocket launches we grew up with them.
Oh, you did?
Grew up with the people that launched them. You were here because of space.
Okay. Was your dad working for the Kennedy Space Center or in the military?
My dad worked for the government civil service with the space program here.
Okay. All right. Now, did you get a chance to meet any of those Gemini astronauts way back when?
I have some pretty neat. I got a nice photo. Actually, the Mercury going
Mercury.
back to the first.
Yeah.
I have a photo that says, "To Frank Catino, best wishes, Mercury 7." And I own all the original autographs on a
Oh,
photo.
cool. Okay.
It's all different color ink. And my dad happened to know gentleman Deke Slayton, who was one of the 7 astronauts. He didn't fly in the original because he had a heart murmur.
Okay.
So again, when you lived here, you ran into people in the space program because that's the only reason you were here.
Like in the grocery store, there's John Glenn. Hey, John, what's happening?
There's a neat gentleman who lives in my town,
Yeah.
Buzz Aldrin. So he was the second man on the moon.
Really?
And he lives in town here and was on one of the condos on the beach. And,
really?
You know, yeah, it's a space program and it's rejuvenated now. And they shoot rockets quite a bit.
Okay, so back to my original question. Do you even bother to look out the window when one's taking off?
Depends what time it goes off. If it's a midnight shot and I'm chartering the next day, doesn't move me anymore. You know,
is that right? Okay, but you would, like if it's 8 o'clock at night.
I mean, you can see them, you can hear them rumble, and now, actually, if you're in the lagoon and in certain parts, when the boosters return, you can see them.
You mean they drop kind of right back down?
And they're GPS guided to a pad on land, some of them, and down they come.
Is that how they're doing them now? GPS guided? They don't just drop them into the ocean and let them sink?
Well, some of them drop, but they don't just kind of drop in the ocean anymore. The boosters, there's a big pod, big ship, kind of a flatbed out there.
Okay.
And like a helicopter landing pad, and they land them right on it.
That's some technology right there. I'll tell you what.
As long as it's not midnight or 1, you know, if you're outside, you'll see one go. Everybody looks up, but
yeah. So now you were mayor of this satellite beach for a long time, weren't you?
I was. I served on council. For some reason, I don't know why they kept electing me. I was the longest elected official in town. So I finally termed out for my last election cycle. But I live in a pretty interesting little beach town, and I like it very much.
They must have liked you.
Or no one else would do it. That's what my friends tell me. Yeah,
they done shot the last 4, and you're the one to take the job.
That's right. So, interesting little town, but
cool.
I enjoy doing it.
Was Buzz Aldrin a good citizen?
Yeah,
was he?
Okay, up on the beach in the condo, and
all right, didn't cause any problems.
No,
but very good. All right. Hey, let's talk about fishing.
Okay,
how about that?
Great.
All right, so this is what I read. I didn't know much about Indian River, Mosquito Lagoon, and Banana River, right? Those are the places we're going to talk about.
Yep, those are 3 of the water bodies here.
Those are it. Okay. I read it's the largest and most diverse estuary on the East Coast.
Yes.
And maybe the largest in the United States. And so I'm kind of curious, just, what is it about these estuaries that just makes it so special for fly anglers in particular?
It's a very interesting estuaries. They're non-tidal for the most part. So they run about 178 miles, this one does.
Mm-hmm.
And the north reaches is the north end of Mosquito Lagoon around New Smyrna, Oak Hill, and it travels down to Stuart, Florida. In that reach, you go through definitely a climate change. The trees and the foliage on the north side of the tip of the Cape, slightly different than the south. The temperature on a day could be a few degrees difference.
Really?
As you travel south in the lagoon systems, around Vero Beach is the start of the subtropics. You look at the trees in Vero Beach, maybe an hour difference than Mosquito Lagoon proper.
Yeah.
Looks nothing like Mosquito Lagoon. And then when you get to Stuart, it looks tropical. Coconut palms, just a different thing. So you have on a given day, it could be 50 degrees up in Mosquito Lagoon. Down Stuart, could be 78, 80 degrees down there if the front hadn't reached there.
Okay, sure.
There's some diversity there.
Yeah.
There's a huge diversity in the species that we have in this lagoon system.
Yeah.
We've got a lot of different varieties. So The north part is slightly, on a given day in normal, is slightly different fishery than going south. And we have a resident redfish, spotted weakfish, we call our trout.
Okay.
Snook, which was generally a southern part of the lagoon system, has now, because of the climate being warmer and warmer each year and we not have freezes, has migrated quite a distance north, New Smyrna, in that area. That was unheard of years ago. So it's variety.
Yeah.
And you have sight fishery areas that you can hardcore sight fish.
Oh, cool.
Areas that you can blind cast shorelines for snook and so forth. Summer months, in the last 5-6 years, we've had a tremendous influx of giant tarpon.
Nice. Really?
75. They weren't here before. We had a lot of baby tarpon and I will talk about later, mosquito controlled ditches. And then when you went south, again, you go south in the lagoon system. Now down at Stewart, they're catching bonefish.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So,
wow, big difference.
A lot of change going on in this estuary.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is it's a brackish water estuary.
Oh, it is.
It's not pure salt. So in its boundaries, starting in the north end, there's these pure freshwater creeks, as pure as can be today, that drain into this lagoon system. They're really not rivers.
Yeah.
And that keeps the salinity in check.
Okay. And that's good for what species of fish like that?
That gives us the big variety we have.
It does. Okay. Yeah. So like tarpon like that?
Snook? Tarpon's one of the most amazing fish there are. They stick their life out in these backwater mosquito infested ditches. There happens to be a lot of them around here. This area, Brevard County, was called the Mosquito County in the years ago because there's a lot. But it gives us, we have little fish like jack crevalles, we have ladyfish, tarpon, snook, trout, redfish. So we have a big variety of fish.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. And if you could describe the different lagoons. So you have Indian River, and then I think you've got Mosquito Lagoon above it,
right?
And so Banana River somewhere.
Mosquito. Okay, so what's interesting is the tip of the Cape in Florida here sticks out quite a distance in the ocean, maybe 4 or 5 miles. So Mosquito Lagoon is the easternmost waterway.
Okay.
The Indian River is west of that. The Banana River is below it and slightly west, because you got a picture, you have this big peninsula that sticks out. Down here being north, Mosquito Lagoon. There is a cut called the Hollover Canal. Mosquito Lagoon is part of the Intercoastal Waterway from Maine to the Florida Keys. So this cut, Hollover Canal, which the Indians did years ago, connects the Indian River and Mosquito Lagoon. So if you cut over there, now you're in the north end of Indian River. Banana River is still south and east of the Indian River.
Okay.
And as they travel south, a place called O'Galley, section of Melbourne, on the tip of Merritt Island. So the south tip is called Dragon Point because there used to be an old dragon there. The north end is actually Kennedy Space Center. So Merritt Island tapers down as it goes south, and at that southern point is where the Indian and Banana River join.
Gotcha.
And then it travels south, and it is the Indian River.
Okay, I got you. All right, so that kind of orients us.
Right. It doesn't get tidal until it gets really past Sebastian Inlet. Sebastian, there is some tide, but really Fort Pierce is a natural inlet, and it has big tide, as does Stewart.
So you've got a kind of a barrier island that makes this Indian River, and that really is long enough that it keeps the tides out of there, is what you're saying.
Yes. And Port Canaveral is not a natural, it's not an inlet. It's a lock system in the back. So you have Ponce Inlet, which is the north, considered kind of the north end of Mosquito Lagoon. Okay. It's tight. You don't have another tidal until you get to Sebastian Inlet. Sebastian Inlet's a very small inlet, depth-wise, okay? Very shallow as inlets go and not very wide. So it doesn't get the push tidal that when you get to Fort Pierce. Fort Pierce is almost 2,000 feet wide, probably 2 miles long. It's a natural inlet, was a natural port back hundreds of years ago.
Okay, I got you. And so when you're out there in these areas, I mean, how remote does it feel when you're out there?
Well, Mosquito Lagoon and the north end of Mosquito Lagoon in the islands and some of the north end of the Indian River is remote. The rest of it, you know, the influx of people into the state has built, not on every shoreline, because there's a lot of protected shorelines. But it's a very straight body of water. Unlike going to the Everglades, where it's a maze of islands.
I see. Sure.
We do have the islands up in the north end of Mosquito Lagoon, but generally most of it is very oriented more north and south and straight.
I got you.
Average depth of it's only 3 feet.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, very shallow body of water.
And so if you're trying to target a certain species at a certain time of year, you kind of walk us through the seasons, like where, I mean, a little bit without giving away all your secrets. Where are you going?
Well, it's interesting. I enjoy the winter months for sight fishing. I think the water is generally clear because we don't get the high temperatures, which might cause algae blooms or the water being darker. So, and then the species become fairly predictable because they want warm water. And shorelines that face southwest at that time of year are usually generally shorelines that the sun shines on longer. And if you find them near a little bit deeper water, they're great. So I like the winter months for the sight fishing of redfish. The baby tarpon can be found generally all year round, but the sight fishing is year round. But I think the winter is a little bit better from the redfish standpoint.
Redfish, okay.
Right. Then the summer months, we're really a 12-month fishery. That's what's remarkable about it. But the summer months, recent years, has brought the tarpon fishery in. Now, you fish different during the summer, or at least I do. In the winter, if you don't get out there till 8, 9 o'clock, because you need to see sight fishing, it's a little windy, they're not tailing. So the best part of the day is 9 to 3 because you can see so good. Well, the summer, you know, you can see the tarpon laid up or rolling around, some stuff at 6 or 7. By 11 o'clock, it's 95 degrees.
Yeah.
So it's really hot.
Right.
And you try to catch some of those redfish early is okay. But also you got to be cognizant that not a lot of oxygen in water that's 95 degrees. The longer you have the fish on, you know, it's not good. So the fishing day for me anyway is more the morning to noonish than in winter where I can fish a longer day because it's not as hot.
Okay, gotcha. So you're getting out in the mornings, hitting it pretty hard. Do you sometimes split the day with your clients and have them come back in the evenings?
No, not most time. I'll tell you what we've been doing a lot, especially the older clients like it, is we go 9 to 3. And the reason for that is you got the sun up. Now, if you like the sight fishing to target fish that you're going to cast to, you can see them by 9 o'clock.
Yeah, absolutely.
By 3 o'clock time frame right now, the sun starts to wane.
Yeah.
You'll feel even on your own self, the skin of the temperature starting to drop.
Yeah.
And when that happens, I think the water temperatures dropping also, and you've had your best part of the day. So I think a 6-hour time frame in the wintertime is a good fishery if you're sight fishing.
Okay, very good. All right, so winter, summer, spring, fall, you do anything different?
Well, springtime is just a transition time. Just depends on what kind of winter we have, or hate to say this, whatever we think winter is here in Florida. So,
We have a flannel shirt on, so it
yeah,
must
I
be a
did.
little
It was
cold right
chilly
now.
today. It was in the 70s.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So, yeah, it was chilly for us. We're getting a little bit of weather the next couple of days here. So, just that transition, depending on the temperature, we'll see how fast you transition into those tarpon and the snook species, a little bit more in the flats and so forth.
Okay. Okay.
September is a very interesting time of year here. We also have another fishery being in September. We have not as good as we used to have, but we have this bait run of what finger mullet.
Okay.
And the mullet would run the beach from the 1st of September to the end of October.
Yeah.
Generally did that an uninterrupted ban for 2 months straight. And the amount of species that were gorging on them were amazing. And then they come in the river system.
Right.
They come in through the inlets and so forth. So it's a lot of sight fishing. It's really kind of a start of our fishing season. A lot of the old timers say fishing starts September 1.
Summer is it
generally so hot
yeah.
that unless you're targeting the tarpon, which 20 years ago only the babies were here, not the big ones.
Do they stick around in September? The big tarpon do?
Depends climate, what happens.
It depends.
Generally,
okay.
They start to wean by then.
Yeah. When's the best time for you? I've always heard it's like May and June in Florida.
So it is in the Keys, Keys,
okay.
March, April, May, June.
Okay.
Here, it was early for a couple of years. It started in April, but generally it was July and August.
Okay.
Now, this year it started in May and lasted to the end of August.
So it changes.
So
interesting.
Is it climate change? Is it water temperature change? We haven't had many winters in the last 14 years. So with that,
right.
The temperature of the water is rising in the lagoon. The height is rising.
And they're sticking around.
The height of the lagoon on an average from 2001 to now, they say raised 9 inches.
Wow, no kidding. Okay, big change there. All right, so how big is that tarpon hanging on the wall behind you there?
Length time girth squared 168.
Say it again. Run that by me again.
Well, we released it. We just taped it.
Okay.
Okay, and that's just a fiberglass mount that a friend of mine did for one of my clients, and then he sold his house and had no place to. So what happened there was a joke, because all of a sudden I'm sitting here and the doorbell rings, and it's my friend Bob Brown, who's a taxidermist, and he had this big thing in his arms, and he goes, "Oh, this is yours." And I'm going, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "Oh, your buddy sent this to you. It cost him $700
to mount that thing,
to wrap it and send it."
Oh, he mailed it to you.
What did you send me? That's what he sent me. My wife didn't know he sent the money to build a place to put it. But that fish was caught way in the back of the Keys, and it was interesting. We hooked it, and the fight didn't last 15, 20 minutes. It jumped like crazy, got it up, measured it, and released it.
Yeah, 168 pounds, you estimate.
So length, so the formula is length times the girth squared divided by 800.
Oh, really? Okay, there you go, folks.
So
that's a pro tip.
That.
Yeah.
So it sits here because he doesn't have a home for it. So
there you go. Yeah. All right, so folks, this is hopefully this will be on YouTube. It'll be one of my first shows on YouTube, and Frank has got more fly rods than I can count on a wall behind him. I always say, if you know how many fly rods you have, you don't have enough. And I think, Frank, you qualify.
Yeah, I'm kind of a glutton. I've been in the tackle industry and guiding for years. And my buddies see that. That's not the bad part. Over my shoulder on the other side, there's a little cabinet.
Yeah.
It holds 25 fly reels that I tell my buddies are crying because they don't have homes. And my dilemma is, do I sell the 25 reels, or do I buy 25 more rods so they have places to go?
I think you buy 25.
I enjoy trying everybody's product.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I've got clients that are left-handed, right-hand retrieve, so I have a whole set for them, no matter what. And then I've got clients that I've had for a long time, and the super fast rods aren't necessarily fit their casting style.
Sure. Okay.
So try to just, and some of them are old rods that I don't even use.
Yeah. How about that? All right. So you think back and all your great stories from fishing in the lagoon. Have you got an epic fishing story for me out of these lagoons?
Oh, I took a guy fishing one day, and all he said thing is told me his name was Roger. And he came to me as a referral from a gentleman called Harry Spears. And Harry's one of the legends out of the southern part of the Keys fishing. So I picked this gentleman up, and he said he was down from England while they were redoing the kitchen of his house. So we go to the lagoon, we're fishing, and he asked me, does any of my kids like music? I said, well, my middle son bangs on the drum, and I don't really call it music, but he goes, you got to keep him in the band. He says, I was in a band for 25 years. And I'm like, okay.
Roger?
Okay, I really didn't want to. I didn't
want blonde curly hair by chance?
So you'll know him. So anyway, I don't like to ask my clients, because growing up here, some of the clients were not guys that were good guys, as it turned.
Okay. I got you.
So lunchtime comes, and he brings it up again. And I was like, all right, I got to ask this guy. I don't want to. So I'm pulling along. We just released a redfish. Fishing was pretty good that day.
Yeah.
And I said, Roger. And he turns around and he goes, I'm Pink Floyd. So it was Roger Waters.
Pink really?
Floyd. Yeah. So
no kidding.
That was one of the gentlemen I took there. And
is that the drummer in Pink Floyd?
No, he's the guitar player. He says
he was a guitar player. Okay.
Yeah. Matter of fact, turn around and says, I'm Pink Floyd. So, so that was one of the guys I took there. But
yeah, I've seen pictures of him now. He looks like an old businessman.
Well, yeah, they're
short hair.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah. So I've had some, great times in the sport. I've been in it for a very long time.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And you've taken some people. Let me see. I wrote down when we talked earlier, Lefty Kreh, right? Didn't you got to know him a little bit?
I knew Lefty, and a lot of people knew him. But we started a fly club here 35 years ago. And I've been in the business since around 1976. I wasn't a machinist, and I built a fly reel, and under my name back in the mid 60s, because reels were hard to get, fly reels. There was not a lot of saltwater ones back then, and change going on. So I built one because this area had a lot of people in it from the space program. Well, back in the mid 75 and 6, the Apollo program was done. The space shuttle hadn't really kicked in, and there's guys that needed work. And so built a reel, sent it to the Orvis company. It was a tarpon reel. And they asked me if I built a bonefish reel. And of course I said yes. And it's on the lathe. It's 4 months away. Well, it wasn't. We were just starting to do it. So I built these reels, which I sold them to the Orvis company until 1984. And that kind of got me into the fly end of it. For that, I built a lot of rods. I got to college and going to college, but a lot of that was in the big game world, trolling and so forth.
Okay.
And then that real kind of got me into the fly end of it. And that's where I met like Lefty would come to our fly club. We've had Chico, Flip lives up here, Nero's, him, Nick Curcione, Lou Tabry. We had a lot of the older guys in it come and speak to our clubs.
Cool.
So yeah.
And you've taken Yvonne Chenard fishing?
We went fishing. It's interesting. I met him years ago with a very, very close friend of mine, a gentleman named Paul Brune, who they put in the Fly Fishing Hall of Fame last year. Paul was from Miami and moved to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where he ran a newspaper.
Okay.
And he ran into Yvonne and helped him with a lot of his original catalogs and so forth.
Nice.
So I had great opportunity, amazing man, Mr. Chenard is. And we went fishing. We've gone few times, the group. We go to the Turks and Caicos Islands, to South Caicos, bone fishing. He said it's the greatest place he's ever bone fished.
Huh.
20 years ago was the first time I believe we went time-wise. And the way you do the flats there is in an airboat. It's too shallow. And before this gentleman, Bebo James, brought the airboats there, some of the scientists believe some of these flats might not have ever been walked. There's no way to get a boat.
Yeah.
And so Yvonne went with us, and he couldn't believe it.
Really?
It's the greatest he's ever seen.
No kidding.
It's pretty spectacular. So spent some time there with him, and then, really met him through Paul again when I went to Jackson in the summer for, vacation and so forth.
Okay. Right. Yeah. And I've heard he's a real minimalist. Like, I know when he trout fishes.
He is a very interesting guy, because when I was mayor, I was talking to him and I was complaining. We're out on this gorgeous flat in the middle of nowhere. And I know he didn't want to hear me complain. And I was complaining about the environment. And, he says, well, it's real easy to find the problem. And I figure, okay, here we go. I'm going to get wisdom from him. And he goes, yeah, just tell everybody to go home and look in the mirror.
Okay.
And
all right.
So, the minimalist. And
like you're the problem.
Very much is. What he preaches, he does.
Well, I see he gave his company away.
Put it in a trust for the environment.
Yeah.
Oh, he's the real deal. I mean, he's
the real deal.
Amazing guy. And it was a lot of fun fishing with him in that setting.
Yeah.
That was one of the coolest fisheries I've ever seen.
What was the fishing like? You've been around a while. What was the fishing like way back when? We're talking 1960s, 70s. Was it way better? How was it different?
I'm going to have to say yes from the standpoint this. I didn't get into fly fishing until early 70s, mid 70s. No one did it here. One gentleman, Gary Schroeder, taught me. He was a musician here, but you never saw people do it. Now, a lot of kids are into it, and it's good. But back then, I was using a spinning rod, and you could go out on the flats, a boat, or just wade, because there was many access points to the river, because you didn't have the building then. And the trout fishing, I mean, I don't think we really appreciated it, because we didn't know any better that it was going to get worse. And you caught these spotted weakfish, or trout, we call them, almost every cast. I mean, it was
crazy.
Remarkable.
Wow.
And we were known as the trout capital of the world, because Field and Stream used to have buttons they were called button trout, which is a trout that was over 6 pounds. You would send it in to Field and Stream, and they would send you a button. Guys had buckets full of them. The world's records came from here.
Really?
10-pounders were dime a dozen. They caught them all.
Speckled trout, 10-pound speckled trout.
Oh, yes, sir. The world's record, I think, from here is 14 something.
Wow.
So, but there was a tremendous amount of them. The fishery is not like it was. It's still good, but it's just, I mean, no one lived here. 1956 statistic, 25,000 people lived in the county of Brevard, which basically takes up bottom part of Mosquito Lagoon down to Sebastian Inlet area. There's 25,000. There's 630 now.
A little bit of change there.
Big, right. So just, there's more pressure on the fish and so forth. But it still is a good fishery, but the bait supply is not as good as it was. Environment, we've had a little issues with the environment, as did Texas. Texas years ago had that brown tide there.
Yeah.
We had it back around 2004-ish.
And what is that brown tide? What is that?
Well, from ours was from the nutrient level.
Okay.
And you got the algae blooms.
It's an algae bloom. Is it caused by fertilizer? Like
fertilizer is one of the
high
nutrients in the water.
Yeah.
So we've done, a lot of the towns have done a lot, and the grass is starting to grow again, and it's really coming back. There's been an increase in the number of reds, trout, and so forth, now that the environment is getting more stable.
Oh, interesting. And when you and I talked a couple of weeks ago, you were describing how the fish have changed the behavior because there's less, habitat for them. I guess they're kind of sitting out as like a sore thumb on a
They
white
are.
beach
And
bottom.
interesting you say that. Was just before we got on, the local shop here had a little Christmas party, and I stopped by, and I was talking to someone on it.
Yeah.
And I was saying that I think what happens is Mosquito Lagoon right now, the grass is growing back gorgeous.
Oh, good.
Like it was originally.
Yeah.
The fish bite better. Okay.
Yeah.
Fish are biting better. There's more of them. They don't seem to be as spooky. And you come to areas where the grass hasn't started yet, a lot of white open sand.
Yeah.
Throw at these fish, and you can make a perfect cast, clear floating line, real long leaders. And I'm talking flies that are very small. That fish poof, spooks
Gone.
away.
Really?
And I think, because I've seen, we released a little baby tarpon, and unfortunately a porpoise came racing at it and ate it. So I think on the redfish end and so forth, when they had all the grass, they had some place to hide. There was a little more cover for them, where now they're more susceptible to your boat movement, anything moving in the water. Yeah. Because there's nothing to hide. I mean, in certain areas, there's a lot of redfish and black drum now. But they're spooky because of that.
So, all right, so tarpon and redfish like the grass, is that correct?
Well, the tarpon, the redfish, I think really like the grass more. It's more protection for them.
Okay, yeah.
So interesting thing I think happened here is lots and lots of redfish we had. Our redfish in the upper part of the lagoon do not go to sea to spawn or in the mouth of inlets. They spawn in the North Lagoon system. Which is very different.
Yeah.
So those fish kind of stay here. The tarpon is a very migratory fish.
Yeah. And
so,
right.
He might spawn in the mouth of inlets, and his larvae is carried into the backwater and into these so-called mosquito impoundments, which are controversial. They're man-made. They were natural marshes, but this is where the larvae of the tarpon and stuff float into. And they float in there and they eat mosquito larvae in that stage of their life.
Okay, so back up on this a minute. First, I'm trying to get my mind around a mosquito, what'd you call it? Lagoon?
They call them impoundments.
Impoundment. So that's a man-made. How does that help mosquito?
It doesn't. Well, so it found out it really didn't.
But
so the area was called the Mosquito County because mosquitoes were incredible. But there were saltwater marsh mosquitoes, which, as people have told me, have no known disease other than it bites people.
Yeah.
So these marsh areas were natural marshes. They flooded because of time of year during the tropical seasons.
Yeah.
There'd be more water in the system. These marshes would flood. And this is where the larvae of tarpon, snook, and a lot of the species would go, grow up. And as that water receded, they came out. Well, what they did is they dug a berm around these impoundments and piled the sand up. And they disconnected the natural river from these impoundments.
Okay. All right.
And they would pump water back and forth at certain times of years to try to control mosquitoes. And then the worst part of it, they sprayed.
Oh, boy.
Okay? And the spray, they found out, really hurt ospreys, the eggs. It made them soft, the blue herrings.
Oh, geez.
And they were losing. So they don't spray anymore. But there was a gentleman named Marty Smithson. And Marty did a lot of the research and said, hey, we need to connect these. And they connected them, a few of them, with drainage, with big piping. And then he started doing some research and put little nets over them and found out that he was getting larvae of snook, redfish, and tarpon incredible in them.
Back in there. Okay.
And they install this piping throughout the area. Every X number of distance, they would connect the pipe. They still pump, but they would let water out where they could drain out and the fish would swim out. Aaron Adams and Bonefish Tarpon Trust, Aaron lives right here near me. They're trying to get them to open them up more. So it's a bigger time.
Okay.
But that's what the mosquito impoundments are here.
It's
they
crazy.
go from really Port Canaveral, Mosquito Lagoon area on the refuge, which is Kennedy Space Center, all the way south to Stewart.
That's a lot. Well, let's shift gears for just a minute, Frank. I've got mostly trout anglers who listen to my show. Not all, but a lot of trout anglers. So give us a quick lesson on, for a trout angler, when you come down to Florida, like, what are you doing to go after, redfish and tarpon?
Well, the red fishery first. I do a lot of sight fishing for it.
Okay.
So, and I don't think it's them not being able to see the fish. They pick that up pretty good. Because a lot of times they're casting rods that they're not used to casting.
Bigger, heavier.
Right.
Okay.
So I use, because I think the rods today have gotten much stiffer per their line weight. The 7-weight rod today was the 8-weight rod a few years ago. Okay. So I use a lot of 6s and 7-weights because I think it's more close to what they're used to.
Gotcha.
So one thing though, I tell people is, if you're home, you need to practice casting, because if you're not used to doing it, that you're not used to using these rods and you're sitting home all winter and you haven't cast in a year, you can't expect, like golf, you're not going to shoot set par.
Right. Right.
Before you come, I tell people 5 minutes a day, a few times a week, just cast.
What do you do? Just stand out? How would you?
I just tell them, just cast.
Get outside and cast. Okay.
Then I tell them, then what I want you to do is cast with maybe 15 foot of line out and leader and holding the fly in your hand. Okay. Because when you sight fish, your line's not in the water. It's in the rod's in one hand,
you're hanging on to
the other. You're hanging on, you're looking. The guide calls 1 o'clock, 30 feet or 40 feet. Now you've got to make the cast to that without the help of the water loading the rod.
Sure. Right.
Okay? So I think that's something that's a little different than on a trout stream where you're mending, coming downstream, you pass, you pick up again and throw. That was one thing I always tell them. And I said, and remember, do not lift your rod tip, because the rod tip is your shock absorber, so you don't break 5Xs and 6 and 7X. Boom, here, you got the tip. But you need a strip strike, keep the rod tip down and hit the fish, and you'll get a better hookup. And I think those are a couple of things I find that the trout guy is not used to doing.
Right, strip setting, we don't do that.
That's not it. But again, I find that, if you look at a 7-weight rod today, and go back 20 years and look at
it's a cannon
8-weight rod. It's I think people are using bonefish and it was 8 weights. Now it's 7 weights or more the norm.
Yeah, interesting. And how important is good casting to being successful out there?
I think it's important to have banner days. If you struggle casting, then the sight fishing might not be what I should put that angler in. I think the best thing for that angler to do is fish a shoreline. So you're blind casting a shoreline for snook.
Like mangroves?
Because that way if it takes you 3 minutes to get the fly there, fine. You're not in any rush. You made the cast isn't so good. Okay, don't worry. Just pick up, go again. So, if you come down, be truthful to your guide. You know, the guide doesn't want to put you in a position that makes it difficult for you to fish. So if you haven't fished, if you have guys haven't fished together,
Yeah.
guy doesn't know. And I go, okay, where do I take him? If I take you to certain spots of the lagoon and you can't cast well, breezy, then I didn't do you any good.
Yeah.
So,
Do you kind of have them? Can you tell like in about a minute and a half?
I think you
how
can
great
tell
you are?
a guy how he handles the rod and so forth. That and again, I think articles years ago tried to sell a lot of tackle and articles, and oh yeah, I saw that bonefish 80 foot away. My buddy, he's a fabulous bonefish guy, one of the greats there is, a gentleman named Rick Ruoff, and they're interviewing him, and I think it was Fly Rod and Reel or something. He was the guide of the year, and they said, okay, Rick, you got someone out there and he's fishing with a guide, and the guide says bonefish 1 o'clock 80 feet. What do you tell him? And his comment was, get a new guide. And I knew he meant, because his comment was, oh, push the boat one more push and make a 40 or 50 foot cast.
Right.
So articles not hurt. He got people interested in it, but you don't fish at 80 feet away.
Yeah, that would be a challenge.
I think most fish in a sight fishing are 30 to 50 feet. Not that a 70-foot cast doesn't catch a fish every once in a while.
Yeah.
But when you look at the sight fishing world, if you're pulling around a shoreline with grass and so forth, how far away can you see?
Probably not 70 feet.
Correct.
Probably
so
not.
I tell people, you cast 30 to 50 foot and you can cast on a dime.
Yeah.
Cast good.
You're going to do all right.
See how far you cast.
So where do tarpon hang out, and where do permit hang out? Give us like a little.
Well, permit are not my area.
Sorry, not permit, but redfish. Yeah.
Redfish. Okay, so the redfish hangs out in most of the estuary, for the most part, shoreline oriented.
Okay.
When they are smaller size, size 2 to 15 pounds, let's say. When they get bigger, 20 pounds, 25-pound fish,
oh shoot,
a little deeper water. Okay.
Can you do me a favor, Frank? You just froze for a second. Yes. You say when they get to be 20 pounds and you froze.
Okay. When they get that size, they're not generally up in shallows. They're on the edges of shallow and deeper water.
Gotcha.
Okay. The tarpon, they're interesting creatures. So a tarpon could be in 2 foot of water or 10 foot of water in the middle of the river. The babies, what I'm saying, babies, 2 to 15-pound fish are a lot more freak oriented. Okay.
Oh, okay. Sure.
And little rivers that come into it, little pockets or ponds that are off the river system, the lagoon system.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. The bigger boys, 4 feet of water, 5 foot of water areas, depending on how calm it is, where they like to lay up, or they like edges also here.
Okay.
So they kind of lay there. Needs to be generally calmer so that they do that and you can see them.
I see. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. What do you do about wind? Because that's got to be a big factor for your caster and for the fish.
Yep. So try to put them on a shoreline so that you're not just hiding out. Okay. You're actually on a shoreline that produce fish, where maybe you pick a lee up. It's an eastern wind. You're going to hang on that eastern shoreline and get a lee. And you got to pick the situation. If it's howling, you're not going to go the middle of part of the lagoon where there's no islands. Maybe you got to go up one of the rivers that lead into the lagoon that serpentines around, that you can fish it. So you got to get to a place where you're using the wind to your advantage.
I got you. As a caster.
As a caster. Yeah. Okay. Strictly casting, you have to get the angler in that situation that he can make that cast.
Okay. I got you.
And the north part of the lagoon is an interesting spot because there's islands. Okay. The middle and south part, there's not as many, very few, more of a straight north-south type of a fishery.
Right.
Whereas Oak Hill and some of that northern areas is like the Everglades, sort of.
Oh, neat.
So you can get lees in that area, very clear, and sight fish.
Oh, neat. And so how big, you say your tarpon they get over 100 pounds now. Is that right?
Well, yeah. And I don't know if anybody knows why that we have them now.
Exciting.
20 years we didn't have them. Back in the 70s, never. I mean, I never remembered it. I know enough of the commercial guys in the river. They would tell me where bait schools were and stuff, but I never heard of anybody goes, "Oh, Frank, you should have seen the big pods 100-pound tarpon." So this year, not as many as the year prior, but there is definitely more here now than there was years ago.
That's pretty exciting.
Aaron Adams with Bonefish Tarpon Trust is starting to tag them here to try to figure out where these creatures are coming from, where they're going.
Yeah. So that's exciting.
Yeah.
So what are the food sources for these two species, tarpon and redfish?
Well, the redfish is more crab and shrimp oriented.
Okay.
Tarpon will eat shrimp and crabs, but the bonefish are more crustacean oriented here.
Eat bonefish or redfish?
No, the redfish.
Redfish, okay.
The redfish is going to eat, crab patterns.
Okay.
And so forth. They'll eat smaller mullet and glass minnows and stuff.
Yeah.
Tarpon, we have a lot of manhaden or pogies here, pilchards here in the river, and mullet. And they're more likely to eat that size food. When you're 60 pounds, 70 pounds, you're not eating something this big.
You want a chunk of meat, yeah. So what kind of flies are you throwing for tarpon then?
Well, I throw a little different flies than the Keys, where the Keys flies seem to have gotten so much smaller over history. And they're using worm flies this big and so forth. We're throwing flies that maybe not quite as big as the old, I'll call it the old style tarpon flies, but we're throwing a little bigger fly. Blacks and purples stand out very good. Some browns.
Yeah. Like how big?
Oh,
like 4 inches.
Yeah, I don't see. I have something here. Let me grab something. I'm a half a foot.
All right, Frank's getting up now. For you folks that aren't on YouTube watching this, it's going to pull a couple flies for us over here.
See if I can find them. Oh, where are you? Okay, so these flies are a lot of guys have been using here, and you're going to see they're much bigger flies.
Yeah.
Anywhere near the Keys. My water, even though it's clear, and sometimes you see the tarpon laid there.
Yeah.
A lot of times you'll see them come up and just settle down, and you're fishing that area, and that fly is going to show up there. It has a lot of marabou in it.
Okay.
Flopping.
Yeah.
Probably the biggest I use here, and I do use smaller, some more traditional key style at times.
Okay.
I use a lot of floating lines here, and I use a clear tip line that 9-foot sinks, and then a clear intermediate. But rods that I use, 10 weights are probably my big rod here.
Okay.
Fish are not like the fish on the ocean side of the Keys, where they're really hot and go. These fish here, you hook them, they're going to run, but they're going to jump a lot.
Okay.
And they're not getting that far from you.
Yeah. And you say on the ocean side, they take off, they scream and runs then, huh?
Well, the key down there on the Keys, you hook a fish on the ocean, I have found those fish were much hotter, being they ran more than the fish in the backcountry.
Yeah, super interesting.
And same here on that. The fish in the river, they do run, they jump, but they jump a lot more than they actually are running.
Okay. So when you're casting out one of those, I call it a streamer pattern for tarpon, what's your retrieve? Like, what kinds of different things you're doing there?
Well, I let it settle. The two-hand retrieve's gotten popular.
What is the two-handed retrieve?
Well, they stick the rod under your arm,
Yeah.
and you retrieve them like this.
And why are you doing that? Did it go faster?
It just keeps the fly going at a steady.
Okay, at a steady.
Yep. And sometimes just the regular type of strip, okay,
Okay.
seems to work.
Do you like to mix it up a little bit and try different things?
Well, this day I'll try, the overhanded, two-handed strip, see if they're hitting on that, biting, and some days
Okay.
just standard, they want it moving a little slower.
Huh. And do they tend to hit it at a steady speed, or do you have to slow it down just for a second?
No,
Or what triggers
I
it?
find that when they're going to hit, look at the size of that fish. He's got to chase down mullet and bait who are definitely not hanging out for him to eat them, right?
Yeah, right.
So that fish has got a mouth this big.
Yeah.
He can swim. He's going to
Yeah.
catch about anything he wants.
They are kind of prehistoric looking fish.
They are. They've been here just after the dinosaurs. Look at all the different environments they've gone through.
Yeah.
Right. They've gone through ice ages. I mean, they've gone through everything, and they're here. They're called the holy fish.
Holy fish?
Go look that up and Google. Michelangelo painted it. It's on the Sistine Chapel.
Oh, is it of tarpon? Is that really?
Fish he's holding is a tarpon.
Really? I had no idea. I've been to the Sistine Chapel.
So if you look at it and you go like, where did he see that fish?
Right.
1400 when he painted it, they didn't travel great distances in the humans didn't in their lifetime.
Right.
So what was the range of that tarpon?
Completely.
So they actually caught a few tarpon this year. I've heard, I saw pictures up in Cape Cod, some huge ones.
Really?
What were those boys doing up there?
Yeah, boy, that's interesting.
They're very adaptive, is what I've learned from the scientists, and they're an amazing fish.
All right, so change the subject just a little bit. Being a mayor of a city, I just find this fascinating. So you're working for Cortland, Orvis, I think, for a while.
I worked for Orvis before, yeah.
Fishing guide, captain, and a mayor at the same time. So what advice do you have for people that want to get into politics, maybe as a side gig? Don't do it.
Oh, God, don't do it. No, it is interesting. I mean, I learned a lot. I got on a lot of boards, environmental boards, and I'm still on today. I sit on the National Estuary Program Citizens Advisory Board for the lagoon here.
Yeah, good for you.
Chair of that committee. It is interesting. And I think too, everybody has an opinion on things, which is good. I think, ability to get there and hold good conversations professionally is the way government should be.
Yeah.
I'm a lot stronger towards environmental things that need to make sure we have those in place before we, do anything, ask the question. It's just like Mr. Chenard. You want to find the problem? Look in the mirror.
Look in the mirror. Usually the source of it is
we've got to, and I find the hardest thing is from it was people don't like change. And to fix this lagoon where we're at is going to take everyone to change their behavior.
Yeah.
It's a pretty hard change.
You think they're up for it, or that's going to be a tough one?
Well, I can tell you that, everybody goes, well, how long? We've got a 0.5-cent sales tax in our county to help raise money for the lagoon.
Yeah.
Everybody wants it done instantly. But that's the wrong answer to me. It's not how long is it take? It's going to take forever because you've got to change your behavior, and you can't do what you did when 25,000 people lived in this county. Now there's 630. We got to change our behavior, the way we're living, fertilizing our yards and doing stuff if we're going to make the river because we can't clean it and then go back and do the same things that made it bad.
Pollution you're talking about.
Pardon?
They're basically, you're talking about people are polluting this.
Yeah, it is. So Chesapeake Bay took 40 plus years, they're still doing it. Tampa Bay, it's 30 plus years, and they're still working on it. So I don't think it's ever over.
Yeah, right.
Mental end. Just got to change. We can't do what we did with the number of people, and I think that was kind of one of the hardest things. Doing it there was saying, okay, here's what we did to get it from A to B. We did it. Nobody else.
So these estuaries, these lagoons must mean a lot to you. I'm curious, what has fishing meant to you in your life?
Well, it's really been my life. I've had an incredible life opportunity to meet some just amazing people
Huh.
in the sport. And, people not only did I fish with, but I've become friends with as other guides. I've met, people of all walks of life.
Yeah.
It's, interesting. I got into it really from the outside, being that nobody fly fished here. Everything fly fishing was not the beginning of saltwater fly fishing, but very
Pretty close. Yeah.
much to do with it is Miami to the Keys. If you look at all the old reels, the Seamasters, the old wedding cake finors, and all that stuff, a lot of the rods was all in that area from Miami to the Keys.
Yeah.
Okay? They had the big three, they had the permit, the bonefish, all that. And me, I was really at the outside of it, and I was looking in, and I liked the history, but I would build rods, and I would go down there and buy my rod parts, and I would see the stew apps and the places and stuff. So it was just great that I had the opportunity to meet a lot of the guys that made the sport great.
Yeah. Oh, that's fantastic. I also wanted to touch on just briefly shore fishing. You got any pro tips for people that are down there on vacation and
Yeah,
wandering the shoreline?
there's one of the problems is areas to do it. Okay, because a lot of the area has been built, but there still is a lot of area that you can wade fish. Up on Mosquito Lagoon, there's a lot of these roads that they have throughout the lagoon and run along the lagoon. So you can pull over, park, get out and wade fish.
Okay.
On the lagoon towards Sebastian Inlet, there's a lot of parks and preserves that you can walk down to the river.
Yeah.
People bring kayaks, paddle boards.
Oh, sure.
All that stuff is very doable here, and there's still a good amount of places to launch.
Okay, super.
Yeah.
Right.
There is good access for it.
What about along the beach on the ocean side?
Wow.
How are people doing there?
That's pretty interesting fishery. That fishery is not all year with the fly, okay? But it's July, you start getting a lot of glass minnows.
Okay.
August, a little more, and some Manhattan pilchards, herring, big glass minnows, which are red herring. Then, remember I told you before, September when the finger mullets start.
Right, yeah.
Okay. And the beach fishing comes alive.
Oh,
big
wow.
tarpon, big snooks, jacks, pretty good. So what has transposed from being a West Coast and an English rod, the two-handed rods, there are guys fishing the beach because they work perfect for the beach.
Yeah.
Long rod, one false cast, you can shoot a lot of line.
No back cast.
No back cast. You don't hit the girls in the bikinis. Boom, you shoot the line out there over the waves.
Yeah.
A lot of intermediates on it, because if you use a floating line, you don't really get a retrieve. All you're doing is taking in slack because of the ocean.
Yeah.
And those big tarpon are on the ocean, tarpon are on the beach.
Yeah.
And
oh my gosh.
So the two-handed rods are now.
That's what a great tip. So
I'm not very good with one yet.
me neither.
With it. So what I do is I use a 10-weight rod on the beach.
Oh.
And I make a shooting head line from a 12-weight line, and I mark it at 31 feet. Okay. And I use an intermediate and stripping basket.
Oh, you do? Okay. All right.
You can't have the line, your running line and stuff down at your feet because of the surf coming.
Yeah, tripping over it.
So you just have a stripping basket. And
there you go.
Species that are more common would be the snook, number one, and then the tarpon.
Okay.
And how you fish it. If you're a tourist and you're down here, you start at one end of the beach. Let's say up by Patrick Air Force Base, which is near Cocoa Beach. And you come to my little town, and the guys will go to beach accesses and look. Oh, no bait here. Get in the car, drive another 5 miles.
How do you know there's no bait? There's no birds?
When you go look, you can actually see the bait pods.
Oh,
and
you
yes, birds are the other giveaway.
Okay. Huh.
And then they'll continue down the beach until they find them.
Really?
And whether it's in my county, so my barrier island stops at Sebastian Inlet. Then there's a bridge over the inlet, and then the county actually changes to Vero Beach to Indian River County. And that barrier island goes all the way to Fort Pierce. And so the guys will just keep working their way down or up until they find the bait pods. And when you find the bait pods, you're going to
get out there. You're gonna okay. So what about the guys down there in spring break? You know, in the April timeframe, is there anything even worth fishing for then?
Well, the beach is not really that time of year.
Yeah.
But the river, I mean, you know,
Get
as long
back
as it's
in.
not cold snap, there's baby tarpon, there's snook, blind cast shorelines, or sight fish shorelines. If you're wade fishing,
Right.
you know, you probably have a better chance than the guy in the boat because you're not as intrusive
Yeah.
being that low. Or if you have a kayak, you know, throw the kayak in.
You get towed around when you hook a
got
big
guys
tarpon.
that do it. Well, the tarpon at that time of year generally are not going to be the big guys yet.
Okay.
But, you know, just kind of the start of it, maybe.
What's an ideal weather pattern for you down there? Like you just mentioned a cold snap that turns them off.
Yeah, we've got some pretty wicked weather right now.
Do you? Okay.
Getting cool. The wind's blowing 30 knots,
Ooh.
35, supposed to blow 35 knots tomorrow,
Mm-hmm.
40 on Saturday to 45 knots. So
Yeah,
that's some subtropical winds there.
Yeah.
And 3.5 inches of rain.
Oh,
now,
geez.
To me, the perfect pattern, which seems kind of strange.
Not that.
Not this. When you get a cold front that comes in.
Yeah.
You have 3 days of cold weather.
Okay.
Then you get a day, it starts to calm. The next day is usually bluebird days, back up to 78 degrees and calm. And that stretch of time between then and the next front, to me, is golden.
That's when so cold front comes in, bad weather, and then when that's over, like the next day, you're good.
It takes about a day to get out, and then all of a sudden you'll see it go from bad weather, and all of a sudden you're going like, God, it's really gorgeous today. Look at that temperature. You know,
do you like high sun? Do you like clouds or sun, or whatever?
Well, if I'm sight fishing, I like sun. If I'm snook fishing and blind fishing for snook, I like cloudy days.
But do the fish care?
I think the snook, the high sun and bright is not as good. Again, that's just my feeling for this.
Well, you would know.
The red fish, I got to see. You know, if I'm in a lagoon, I'm sight fishing.
So you need some sun. Oh, super interesting. Man, well, we could talk for hours here, but Frank, thank you so much for being on the show. It was great talking to you.
Thank you very much for having me. And
how can people get in touch with you?
Just give me a call, 321-223-7700. And I'm old fashioned, but I do have a website. I think it's captainfrankcatino.com. I have someone that does that. You know, all that stuff is over my head.
Are you on Facebook?
No, I have a Facebook account, but I don't know how to use it. But
I have
a website. I know. I got a
Instagram.
14-year-old, my granddaughter, to help me. But
you control for customers on those platforms. Hey, before we go, I meant to ask you your favorite restaurant at the end of the day. Where do you like to go after the end of the day of fishing?
Well, when I go, there's a place here called Cuban Island. Okay. And it's a pretty interesting place. It was just a little tiny kind of hole in the wall, and it started to evolve. Small. You got to call for reservations now. But here's what it is. It's a Cuban restaurant that's owned by Italian guys from Naples, Italy. Okay. Owned by Italian. His nephew, one of them is the chef, and his other nephew is the maitre d' of the place, and they're all from Italy. So that's kind of my hangout. It's called Cuban Isle, and It's fabulous food.
How about okay, what's your favorite shore lunch?
Oh, God. Um, Never really thought of it. I'm not much of an eater on the boat myself.
Yeah. Do you feed your clients, or do they just?
Well, no, we can't. Because I can't have food they can bring,
Okay, so they
but
bring
we
their own.
can't here because the county doesn't like us
Oh,
to
really?
serve food because we're not food vendors.
Oh boy.
Kind of
Okay, so
different
you're not
out there.
supposed to do that.
But a lot of things, what I do, depend on where I'm fishing.
Yeah.
Fishing all day. There's some pretty great little restaurants on the river.
Oh,
And what
good.
I find is the guys like to, start early, fish till about 11:30, boom, hit the restaurant.
They
That
want to
gives
go
them
in.
a break.
Yeah.
Okay.
You
They get
too.
something to eat, break, and then
Yeah.
boom, we're back out.
Okay.
And so
Oh, that's fun.
that's kind of a way we do it.
I got you. Well, yeah, I wish you extraordinary success in all your adventures to
Thanks, buddy.
follow.
Merry Christmas to you, and thank you.
Yeah,
Call me.
absolutely.
Appreciate
So,
it.
folks, thanks everybody for listening. We'll be sure to post a bunch of info on my Destination Angler show notes, and maybe we can get some pictures from Frank of some of those flies he was showing us here on YouTube. Put those on our Facebook and Instagram pages. As always, you can DM me or email me with comments and suggestions at shag50@gmail.com. If you like the show, please share it with a buddy. As always, our music is by a Brothers Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we will see you again soon. Tight lines, everybody.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see.